All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome again, Northeast Park Hill Mobility Meeting. This is the second of this series of meetings talking about these corridors. Thank you for taking your time tonight. We are going to go ahead and move to the next slide. Want to talk through a little bit about the rules of engagement here. Excuse me. Let me get the next slide up, David. The rules of engagement here is what we call it, basically just to be friendly to your neighbors. This is, all people who are working towards the same goal here of improving your neighborhood, improving Denver. So generally how we're approaching that is you can use the chat box or raise your hands during the Q&A session. Use the chat box at any point tonight, but we will be having breakout sessions as well, assuming we have interest in different areas. But mostly be respectful to each other. And, like I said, we're all here for the same reason. So go ahead, move to the next one. Orientation, the last meeting we had was in Teams. I know probably most of you are more familiar with Zoom, but in case you aren't, we are recording this meeting so that you can share it with your neighbors in the future. We'll post it on the website as soon as we can. Usually that's within the next week, definitely, and sometimes within the next few days. Please mute yourself for the majority of the time here. We will have time that you can be unmuted. The mic off button is a little microphone, and then you can have your camera on or off as you please. As far as the camera goes, if you're having any bandwidth issues, if you keep your camera off, it'll help a little bit as well. And then you can see in the purple there the chat location, and you can follow along with other questions people are asking. Again, the Q&A sessions, the primary one will be at the end of the talking through both corridors, and we're gonna use a breakout session. So next one. Meeting overview, kind of an agenda here. At 6, obviously into that already, doing project introduction and background, and then we'll get into each of the corridors that we're going to talk about today. Today we're talking about 35th Avenue and Dahlia Street, and we can talk a little bit about the other corridors that we talked about last time, but these are the primary ones we're going to go through. And on each of those, first 35th and then Dahlia, we're going to talk through basically project background and overview, and then proposed design and the schedule. And then after we've gone through both corridors, we are going to do a breakout session. And after we come back from that, we'll do next steps, kind of what you can expect as construction comes up a little bit closer here. Next slide. So the first thing we'd like you to do is the breakout room selection. You can see highlighted here the 2 corridors we're talking about primarily. So the way we're splitting breakout rooms up, and it will happen later, not immediately, but I want to get the team enough time to split folks up, is if you want to put in the chat box, number 1, if you live or work on East 35th or Dahlia, and then number 2, if you live or work outside those segments, but are still interested in these corridors. So folks can put 1 or 2 in the chat box at any point during the meeting, and that way we can get you broken out quickly once it comes time for that towards the end of the hour. All right. So really quickly, I just wanted to introduce your DOTI team of planners, designers, engineers who've been working hard on this project and in this area of Denver. I'm Alicia Zimmerman. I'm with Fox Tuttle. I'm moderating tonight. The planning lead is David Pulsifer. He's with City and County of Denver. DOTI is what we call it, Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, DOTI. Dana Hoffman is a community designer at DOTI. And Adam and Sarah are the project managers here. Adam is with us tonight. And then Hadar is the engineering lead on both of these corridors. So with that, I will turn it over to David.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Alicia. And thank you everyone who is taking some time with us this evening to help participate in these projects. They are really important, and we're so glad that you are sharing some of your valuable time with us. So we'll try to move through these slides as quickly as possible. And again, everything's being recorded, and there'll be this presentation will be available if you really want to do a deep dive. But we do want to emphasize hearing your feedback in the breakout rooms. But we just kind of want to set some background in terms of how we got here and why the city is looking at these projects. The image on the top left kind of illustrates the challenges that Denver's facing. We have people moving to Denver. Denver, as you know, is growing rapidly, and those people are bringing their cars with them. And it's just not an option to make all of the roads wider to fit more people in their cars. We actually we have to think about moving people more efficiently. And so when we give people more modal choice, it actually helps everybody, because it helps people in cars when less people are in cars. When we make it easier for people to take transit, make it easier for people to walk, and make it easier for people to bike. And in the Mobility Action Plan, Denver set a goal for by 2030, we want 15% people walking and biking, 15% people taking transit, and 50% people driving by themselves, or a single occupancy vehicle. That's what SOV stands for. And right now it's actually at about 75%. So we still have a ways to go. We also have a goal for safer streets in Denver. With the increase of people moving here and driving here, unfortunately, that's resulted in seeing an increase in people being seriously injured and dying on our streets. And we firmly believe that no injury or serious death is a foregone conclusion. No death, all lives are valuable, and it shouldn't be a foregone conclusion that happens. And so we are trying to reverse that trend by coming up with solutions and infrastructure that help people slow down and infrastructure that protects our vulnerable users of the road, primarily people walking and biking. So just a little, one of the questions we frequently get is, well, how did we even choose these streets? I wasn't involved in the process that helped select the street. And so there's some background history here. Now going back almost 10 years, was one of our first comprehensive master plans for bicycles. It's called Denver Moves Bikes in 2011. And then we updated it again with additional facility types or different types of roadways that can be designed for people biking. And then in 2018, you may have been involved in the Denverite effort, which was actually a multi-plan effort with parks and community planning and development. And that looked at all of the different aspects of livability and living in Denver. And this project was also reconfirmed during that process. And now that we have a paving opportunity to repave 35th, this brings us as a great opportunity for us to look at the street even closer. And paving is a really big opportunity for the city. And you may not know that almost 500 miles of of roadways are repaved every year in Denver. And they have it broken down into a science in terms of temperatures and distance from asphalt plants. It's very interesting. But a very, very small sliver of that, a small component of that is actually paving projects that then also intersect with our proposed bike plan. And so when we have a street that is proposed for a bike facility that is being repaved by our street maintenance team, it then gives us an opportunity to have a conversation with the community, talk about the project, talk about what we're seeing, and then talk about how we can make this project work better for you guys. And there's lots of different ways. Paving is just one, but we have lots of different programs in ways that the city builds things. And these are just a handful of them, but they're all related, and it's really a great opportunity. And if we just think individually and instead of intersecting our programs, we would miss out on a lot of opportunities. So it's really important to look at these all together and see how a signal project or a maintenance project could also benefit children getting to school or filling a sidewalk gap. So also want to highlight, we shared actually this slide with when we were with you guys last time, but just want to highlight the amount of work that's going on in the area. We have sidewalk projects. We have a larger Colorado Boulevard safety study. We have several different bikeway projects that have been identified. And then you can see in the purple and the tan colors, all of the roads that are scheduled to be repaved. So if you guys live in these neighborhoods, you are on these streets, you can be looking out for some exciting things coming your way, you know, on your street coming up this summer. Okay, so and you know, now focusing on a little bit, and just want to provide some quick updates right at the front. You know, originally when we met with you guys earlier this year, we did talk about Dahlia, Holly, and 35th, and want to acknowledge right off the bat that because Dahlia and Holly, because of their proximity to I-70, we don't want to tear up fresh asphalt. So those projects will not be going in this year, but likely in 2022. So just want to mention that up front. And there, you know, just any project in proximity to I-70 is making sure that we go through proper coordination so that we're not, so we're using the resources as best as possible. So first want to talk about East 35th, Dahlia to Quebec. So this is the study area. This is what we are looking at. And when I say we, I mean actually a group of people. We have planners, engineers, and people who are, you know, experts in working with the community and city council, and you know, also working with city departments. So we have a lot of different eyes looking at the street, as well as our consultant partners who help us with these projects. And as you can see, what some of the benefits of this project and what we're trying to accomplish is providing a network. And when we say network, we're talking about projects that connect to other projects. You know, I'm sure many of you who've ridden bikes in the city before have encountered the situation where you're riding on a bike lane and then it ends all of a sudden and it doesn't connect to anything and you're just kind of left high and dry. And that's what we're trying to avoid by building a network. So you can see all these dashed lines on the map are proposed bike facilities. And so we want people to not have to end their route or end their journey just because they get to the end of the route, but then they have another destination to get to. We'll also be looking at ways to improve intersections through markings and other infrastructure, as well as giving us good connectivity to schools and parks and parts of the community that people want to get to. And I think this is Hadar, is that correct?
Yes. Thanks, David.
To Hadar. Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hadar, and I'm going to be talking about the existing conditions on 35th Ave today. So in the field today, we currently have 10-foot travel lanes in each direction. And there's also parking on both sides of the street, measuring at 8-foot parking lanes on both sides. The posted speed limit along this corridor is 25 miles per hour, and currently there's no dedicated space for bicyclists. And that is, oh, sorry, go back, David. And that is 35th from Dahlia to Hudson. 35th from Hudson to Holly, we see those travel lanes opening up a lot to 16-foot lanes in each direction, which is substantially wider and can lend itself to speeding and things like that. So those are the two segments we have along this corridor. And now next, thanks. So we also collected collision data between 2015 and 2020. During that time frame, there were 96 vehicle collisions along this corridor. And our graph on the right highlights the bicycle and pedestrian related collisions. Between 2015 and 2020, there have been 4 pedestrian related collisions and 2 bicycle related collisions. And our map here highlights where those occurred. Next slide. And this is back to you, David.
Thanks, Hadar. Okay, so we want to report back on sort of what we heard on the first meeting. So what we did is it's really great. We got over 100 comments, which is fantastic for projects like this. And then we sort of bucket them into common categories. And so we can kind of see the stronger themes that we heard back from you. So a lot of interest in improving these corridors for the safety for everyone. We heard about parking. We also heard about prioritizing bicyclist safety and concerns relating to pedestrian safety, challenging intersections. Intersections are typically the most dangerous part of any journey and definitely where the majority of our crashes happen. So looking at the intersections, and then it starts to trail off after that. So most commonly noted, we heard concerns with vehicle speeding and traffic volume. We heard concerns about the loss of street parking. And we also heard from the community that they want to feel comfortable while riding a bicycle, and prioritizing pedestrian and ADA issues along the corridor. So these pictures kind of illustrate some of the things that we heard back. You know, we can see cars parking, pedestrian safety, providing safe places for people to walk and cross the street, and then also ride their bikes. So how can we address some of what we heard from you guys in this project? Well, as it relates to safety of all users. Bike lanes, what they do is, as Hadar mentioned earlier, in some of the stretches, there's these very wide lanes. And what wide lanes do is make it easier to speed. And it may be, you may be unaware of it, but when you're traveling on I-70 or I-25, the lanes are 4 to 5 feet wider than a normal, residential road that you might drive on. And that's to make it easier to go a high speed. So in this instance, we want to do the inverse. We want to make the lanes narrower to make it more uncomfortable to go fast. Especially because we want people to go, there's concerns with speeding. So we want people to know and have that visual and physical cue that this is a street. These are streets that you shouldn't expect to go fast on. In some instances, we will be able to keep parking, but we are proposing now in other instances, in order to get the bike facility in, that we will need to be removing parking. And that relates to prioritizing bicycle safety. If we have a dedicated space on the roadway for bikes, it makes it safer for them. And in making roads safer for bicyclists and slowing people down also relates to pedestrian safety. It makes the people in cars a further distance away from people on a bike or in the sidewalk. So it creates a space there and a buffer and makes walking more comfortable. So this kind of illustrates what we were talking about in terms of the proposed design and what narrowing does, especially if you have a street where there's low parking utilization or not very many people parking on the street. It makes the street feel and operate a lot wider than it currently is. So when we formalize that by putting striped lanes and bike lanes, it just makes it a much more predictable and a traffic calmed environment. This still me, Hadar? Yep. Okay. So this is a typical, what we would call this a cross section, cutting the road in half of what the street will look like on 35th between Hudson and Holly. So we'd have an 8-foot parking lane, a 5-foot bike lane, 11-foot travel lanes, and then the same on the other side. And we'll keep parking wherever possible. And then for 35th between Dahlia to Hudson, Holly to Quebec, we have room for 11-foot travel lanes and 7-foot bike lanes. There may be some smaller aspects of this that get changed, and we may do provide a buffer between a painted stretch between the bike lane and the travel lane. But this gives you an idea of what it looks like, and then the picture to the left gives you just a very similar idea of what that might look like on your street. So pedestrian safety, one thing we can do with street resurfacing projects is identify intersections that are important to the community. And that's something we would love to hear from you guys today is what are those, important intersections. So, some of the things we can look at are providing stop bars, which is, that place where that tells, cars, you have to stop here instead of, creeping all the way out into the intersection when someone's stopping, and then marked crosswalks for people crossing the crosswalk. Just going to give you guys a timeline of where we are on everything. We started back with you guys in March to listen and hear some of your concerns. Now we're sharing with you the intent of our design and what we hope to accomplish. And we will wrap this up. And then in respects to 35th, we'll be installing it this summer, and then Dahlia and Holly later next year. Okay, now we're going to move into North Dahlia between 39th and 35th.
David, before you get into that one, I just wanted to remind folks to please put your breakout room selection in the chat. You can see which chat or which breakout I live, work on the segment is breakout room 1. I do not live or work on the segment is breakout room 2. And for those of you who have called in, when we get to that point, I will ask you which breakout room you'd like us to send you to.
Thanks, Alicia. Okay, now we'll be moving to North Dahlia. And this, for our purposes tonight, this is the study area, our study area we're looking at. And again, a dashed line means this is what we're proposing. It's not currently installed yet. So again, what this project does, going back to that network conversation, it provides, really the primary connection going north and south out of the neighborhood, of course, close to the golf course, and what the future holds for there. And also, then connecting to the project on 35th, and then going south, and then also eventually Bruce Randolph, which will be a great project that connects towards downtown. Again, gives us an opportunity to look at destination connectivity and and also the greater regional network.
All right, I'm going to be talking about the existing conditions on Dahlia. So again, what we have out there today. And for this corridor, we've broken it up into 3 different sections to talk about the existing conditions there. So our first section is Dahlia from 35th to 38th. And out there today, we have, screen a little bit, 16-foot travel lanes in both directions, parking lanes on both sides, measuring from about 7.5 to 8 feet. The speed limit varies from 25 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour along the corridor. And once again, there's no dedicated space for bicyclists. And as we talked about earlier on 35th, 16-foot lanes are really wide, a lot wider than what we like to see. Next slide. The next section that we're going to talk about is 38th from Dahlia to Elm. So that is the picture on the top. Today we have a travel lane in either direction measuring at 10 feet and parking on both sides. And our last cross section is along Elm Street. Here we go back to those 16-foot travel lanes in either direction, and once again, parking on both sides of the street, about 8 feet. For both of these corridors, or I'm sorry, both of these segments of our corridor, the posted speed limit is once again 25 or 30 miles per hour, and there is no current dedicated space for cyclists. So once again, along our corridor for Dahlia, we looked at the collision history between 2015 and 2020. This corridor had 20 vehicle crashes between those years, and none of those involved bicyclists or pedestrians. And lastly, we conducted a parking study. On-street parking along a corridor might be impacted by the design of bike facilities, depending on what the designers think is the best option for this location. So to understand those potential ramifications of parking removal, we conducted a parking study, and we collected parking at 3 different times because of the different land uses along this corridor. So the first time that we collected parking was an early weekday morning. So midweek, Wednesday, 5:30 a.m. This is when we would expect to see the most amount of residential parking being occupied. What we saw was 18% of available parking was used, 18% occupied, which means there was 82% available. The next time that we looked at was a weekend morning, in the later morning. So again, we're seeing kind of those residential parking being used. So that was on a Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Parking was a little bit lower then, about 14% used with 86% available parking spaces. And then our final time was a midday weekday day. So we looked at the parking on a Wednesday at 12:30 p.m., so around noon, and that showed 27% of available parking was occupied, 73% free.
Okay, thank you, Dar. So similarly, what we did with 35th, want to talk a little bit about what we heard and how that feedback worked into the design of this project. So kind of had some similar themes. Again, got great feedback and really appreciate that, over 80 comments on this. So concerns relating to intersections, and we're wanting to make sure that this works for everybody, safety for everyone, concerns about parking, and then specifically pedestrian safety, and then other existing conditions, and bicycle safety, and that trails off after that. So some very interesting feedback in relations to it being difficult to cross busy intersections, concerns about the loss of street parking, and similarly to 35th, prioritizing pedestrian and ADA issues along the corridor. So we do have some challenging intersections, and bike projects can help with that. Again, it can also help with the safety for everyone on the roadway, as discussed earlier, and again, acknowledge that, it's important to have a conversation with the community about parking and understand their needs before the project is finalized. So as it relates to intersections, clarity will be improved along the project. Again, mentioning, some of the things that we can do, like striping intersections. Again, improving safety for all users by visualing the narrowing lanes, slowing speeds down. As Hadar mentioned, 20 crashes is quite a bit, quite a lot of crashes for such a small segment. So that's usually an indication that there's some speed concerns and some people not following the law there. So that helps. A bike project can help with that. And pleased to acknowledge that we can keep parking on the majority of the corridor, and that we will only have to make that trade-off on a couple of blocks. And we will also be looking to install crosswalks. So this is an example of one of our challenging intersections, and removing some signage that makes it a little more difficult to navigate. Oops, sorry, got a little ahead of ourselves. Okay, safety for all users. This is what the cross section of the street will look like. What we're proposing: a parking lane, a 6-foot bike lane, a 10-foot travel lane, and then between Dahlia and Elm, a 6-foot bike lane, and a 12-foot travel lane. And I have these pictures on the left give you an idea of what that can look like. So we're able to keep parking in the majority of the residential parts of the street. And it's really just on these 2 blocks here that we need the space for parking to install the bike lane. This gives you an idea of what we can do It really help. All of these markings are just much better for bicyclists and pedestrians. It gives visual cues to people in their cars that they should expect to encounter people walking and people biking. And again, just makes for more predictable crossing locations, especially when you have an unstriped intersection. You know, pedestrians kind of just feel like they have to fend for themselves, but when everything's striped, it makes for a more predictable environment. Similarly to where we were with 35th, this is where we are on this project. You know, it's taken a long time to get here, but really pleased to announce that, you know, it's not going to be very long before we're able to start doing improvements on this street. So we still have plenty of time to talk, hear from you guys and see what we may have missed and what's other feedback we should consider before the project becomes final. So is this you, Alicia?
Yep. Great job, David. Thank you. And Hadar for explaining what we have out there right now and what we're looking at for both of these corridors. We have gotten 1 or 2 questions on this so far. I see one from Leslie about taking away the parking. So it sounds like you're possibly one of the residents along that corridor. So I think that would be a good one to ask in the breakout rooms. And never fear, we're going to report the questions from the breakout rooms back afterwards, so everybody can hear both sides or both breakout rooms as well. Let's see. First question is, team, how close are we on assigning breakout rooms here? I'm going to go through and ask the phone numbers to unmute and tell us here. We're getting close. See, there's a phone number ending in 8372. If you are able to, can you unmute and tell us which breakout room you would like to be in? Let's see. And now I no longer see the 8372, so they may have disappeared. One ending in 7670. Are you able to unmute? I'm gonna hit ask you to unmute, see if you're able to.
This is Mary.
Got it. Are you 76?
And I'm just listening because it's the first time I've been on the communication, and I'm just going to listen.
Okay, great. Are you a resident on the corridors?
No, I'm not a resident. I'm in the area. I know exactly where you're talking about. Very familiar with it, but I just want to listen.
Okay, great. I think everybody will disappear into breakout rooms for a few minutes. So we'll go ahead and put you in breakout room 2, but you'll pop back in as well. So you can hear the questions in breakout room 2, since there won't be any in the main.
Thank you.
Yep. 7540. Are you able to tell us? That may be another one that disappeared partway through here. Yeah, I don't see it. Okay, 6152. Phone number ending 6152.
2.
Okay, 6152 is breakout room 2. And then the last one, thank you. Last one is phone number ending 1437.
Breakout room 2.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to make sure we didn't miss anybody because those folks aren't able to raise their hand. So, all right, IT team, are you all able to put everybody in a breakout room, or do we still have any questions? You can assign though too.
We are all set.
Okay. So everybody keep an eye out. You probably will automatically go, but there's also a button that'll pop up that says join the breakout room. So we'll see you all for about 15 minutes of discussion in breakout rooms in just a second. Actually, leave it on that breakout room slide because we're going to do a little quick reporting back in. room one, can you all give us a quick summary of the questions that were asked and the responses and anything that's still outstanding we need to answer?
Damn, why?
Yep, I can report back for the group and folks can chime in if they'd like. We had some just clarifying questions. We know that there's different designs on different parts of each corridor. So just confirming which sections of 35th will retain on-street parking versus removal of on-street parking. We had a general comment, and I think we heard this a couple times, that there is some speeding and feeling of lack of safety. And so a lot of hope that this project will improve safety for all. We also got a good question here about Skyland Park, and that area is used very heavily on weekends. And there's a lot of pulling in and out with traffic. And a lot of just different types of users. So making sure that our design incorporates reminders to different users that that area is heavily used. So we may be looking at additional signage or symbology in those areas where there's heavier use. On Dahlia, we did hear about a particular segment of the street where there tends to be more speeding. So that was great feedback for us as well, to see if there are specific traffic calming tools that are in our tool belt that we can apply there, which is just north of 36 for a couple blocks. We also did talk a little bit briefly about the need for sidewalks on 35th. Everyone was aware that that's not something we can do as part of this project, but we want to log that is a priority to utilize our other programs to make sure that that happens. And we did get one comment at the end, and we got a little bit cut off, and we could maybe take a few minutes to talk through it here if we need to, but it sounds like sometimes folks coming out of the alleys are coming out pretty quickly, and maybe there's a need to look at the site triangle, as we would call it, to make sure that there's visibility. So encouraging them to move slowly if we can, but also making sure that there's good visibility for everyone, so that when that movement happens, folks are safe. I think that's it.
Thanks, Dana.
Great, thank you, Dana. All right, breakout room 2. David, do you want to summarize, or I can summarize, either way?
Sure. So I would say, yeah, some of the first comments we got were just questions about where will people park on 35th, and if parking is removed. So, answer there is in some instances, properties have parking on their property, and that's where we prefer they would park. The next occasion would be the closest adjacent street. Also heard some, just general project support, heard some feedback about street lighting, and that we should make sure that we can look for opportunities to ensure that the street is being properly lit, or look for places where it's not being properly lit. So we that's a separate process, but we can definitely look at that and notify our city partner on that component. And I think that was pretty much it. Then we also got a question about, how do we choose different types of bike infrastructure? Anything I'm missing, Alicia?
Just the one comment or question about how putting in a bike lane really can benefit pedestrians. And
That's right. That's right.
So, okay. Well, thank you. So I want to make sure that we got everybody's questions answered. This is a little bit different format than we've used in the past. So please, I'm looking at the chat. Please raise your hand or chat if there's any last questions, but if not, we're going to move on to, oh, and I don't have my participant list up. Okay, I don't see any raised hands. We're going to move on to next steps and give you a few extra minutes of your evening back. So as far as the next steps, the easiest way to get a hold of us is by submitting an email to bikes@denvergov.org, bikes@denvergov.org, and when you do that, please include which corridor name you're interested in. that email gets quite a few different emails of different subjects. So we want to make sure it goes to the right person. We also have a new hotline for this bike paving project. It's kind of paired with another partner project, and the phone number for that is 303-223-6575. 303-223-6575. And again, leave a message, leave your name, your comment, include your corridor name and the corridor you're interested in, and also contact info if you would like somebody to contact you back. But in general, you can get most of the information on our website, which is bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving. bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving. And you can sign up for office hours there, or just get the meeting recording in case you want to send this on to your neighbors. And you can find the email address and phone number there as well. You can also, if you'd like to join the email list for this project specifically, feel free to put it in the chat or visit the website and submit your email there. And the last piece of coordination that we have for this is the one piece of 35th that is planned for the tentatively planned for summer installation in 2021. So this coming summer, we will send out construction flyers to the immediately adjacent parcels. So if you touch that roadway, you will get a construction flyer before paving starts in your neighborhood. So while this is the last public meeting in this series, you will hear from us again before that's constructed. So let's see, next slide, David. Last thing we have for you is just that, let's see, might make sure we don't have any last questions. Last thing we have is just that we've changed the way we do public meetings a little bit with the breakout rooms and trying to make sure we have additional time to address your comments and questions. And so we've also added this survey, and the survey is about the meeting. It's not about the project as much. Almost like a customer service survey, so we can make sure that we address your needs as far as how we interact with you, tell you about new projects. So if you could fill that out right now, it's open for just a few days, and it's a really short survey. It is bit.ly/NE Park Hill Meeting Survey. So Northeast with NE Park Hill Meeting Survey. bit.ly/NE Park Hill Meeting Survey. That would be great so that we can make sure to continue to improve. David, anything I missed before we close out here?
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.